Welcome to another episode of African Policy Heroes Unveiled, where young African leaders share their inspirational stories. My name is Apiwe Hotele from South Africa. I am a young African leader fellow at the Florence School of Transnational Governance. Today we have a very special guest, a dear friend of mine who is an economist with a focus on political economy, Jawhratelkmal Kanu. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you. It's very nice to be here with you today.
How are you today?
I'm good.
So tell our viewers a little bit about Jawhara. Who is Jawhara?
Okay, that's a good question to start with. So my name is Jawhratelkmal Kanu. I'm Sudanese. I've been living in Sudan up until recently. Professionally, as you said, I'm an economist. I did my bachelor's and master's in economics. I studied my whole life in Sudan, and I did my master's in the UK at the University of Bradford. Economics has always been a passion for me, so I like to analyze things with an economist's mind. However, politics is also a passion in terms of practice and in terms of even studying. So over the recent years with the political events in Sudan, I find myself more entrenched in the political scene. And I try to look at it, of course, with an economist lens. So my focus is mostly on political economy in terms of like institutional performance, governance, how to develop government in structures, institutions. And now more and more, I'm even looking at like, economies of war, informal cross-border trading, and so on. So it goes, it gains more layers as I go ahead. Professionally, I've been doing different things. Just like any graduate, once I graduated, I didn't know what to do with my life. so I was trying different things. I remember my first internship, I was doing finance, because in the last year, in the last year in university, my specialization was finance, economics and finance. So I had a 6 months contract in my internship. By the second month, I knew that I don't want to do this for the rest of my life, but I had to finish the contract. So at least I knew what I don't want to do in life.
Absolutely, that's very important.
After that, I was experimenting with different things, but it was mostly with international organizations in my country. So I did work. The first one was a local organization, and then I was working with the British Council, the French Embassy, and moved until now working with the US Institute of Peace. Along this, I always found a passion for different causes, either in my community or in the region. So I've always been active with women groups. I think for me, being a women rights activist is just part of my personality. It's not something even like, it's not an addition. It comes with a personality. So I've been mostly active with different women rights groups, mentoring programs for younger girls, even though at the time, now that I look back, at the time, even me, I needed mentoring, but I was involved in different mentoring programs. Additionally, as I said earlier, with the political sphere in Sudan, I was more and more engulfed into political activism, with nonviolent action mobilization, and so on and so forth. Nowadays, I work for the US Institute of Peace. I do some political economy analysis for different events that are happening in the country, and I'm also organizing different grassroots groups in terms of demanding for more political participation for youth and for minority groups.
Oh, awesome. Mama, at every stage of our lives, I think we meet different individuals that play different roles in our lives. We refer to them as heroes, leader, mentors, and so on. If you were given a chance to speak about a particular hero or heroine that stood out for you, who would that be?
That's an interesting question, because over the years I was also asking myself, how when you apply for different programs, they ask you who's your hero, and then I ask myself who's the hero. Because in my head, I think over the years I thought a hero comes with particular characteristics, that it's a perfect kind of person.
Absolutely.
And
it's a well-known person.
A well-known, or someone that's either perfect or close to perfect. But I think over the years I consider myself a critical person. I question things a lot, and I was questioning many of these role models. So no one was perfect enough in a sense. But then I realized, maybe if I look around, there are people that have been a sounding board or a rock over the years, that have been constant, even though they're not perfect, and even though they're not a shining kind of example. And actually when I think about it, I would always think of my dad. Even though, as I said, like I'm pro women, pro everything, and my mom might be upset when she hears this, but I would say my dad, because I like how he just shines in the most regular ways. How in his calmness, he's always calming. How in his wisdom, he shares some good lessons with you, and how just an ordinary man coming from an ordinary place manages to hold so many things together.
Yeah. So double tapping on your dad, is there a particular action or act that your dad did that stood out for you and you would say has shaped the particular leadership aspect or leadership skill that you hold with you today?
Again, as I grew up and I've been looking at things more critically, I realized, so in my family, this is a bit of a personal thing, but we're two girls. And in my community, mostly there is tendency to prefer boys. But I didn't realize that my dad never had that bias until I grew up. Like, I was always treated that I had the right to be everything I wanted and to fulfill every potential that I was meant to do. So I like this kind of thing, that he never actually did that behavior where I felt like, this is a no-go for me because I'm a woman, or I cannot do this because I'm a girl, or I cannot pursue this particular career, I cannot travel, I cannot do this because I'm a girl. What he did is that he always made sure that I have what I needed in order to achieve these things, and this is something I don't take for granted, because I look around and I see how other women are not provided with that. So over the years, this has always been a constant. Another thing is that he always believed in me, and in my sister as well, in different ways, because we have our different characteristics and shortcomings.
Yeah.
But he always emphasized that, even though you don't have this, like for example, for my sister, he would say, even if you're not that smart in math, you still have other good things.
Yeah.
And for me, even if you're not as social, you're still good in other aspects. So he would always emphasize the better half for us. So I like that.
Okay, awesome. So you mentioned that you are obviously an economist. You are in the economic space, particularly political economy, which is quite volatile. So what kind of leadership qualities would you say someone who is in that space requires?
I think the first one, which I kept mentioning throughout the day-to-day, is being critical, like not taking things for granted and trying to analyze the bigger picture always and the different factors. Because when you think, like now for me, when I think of a political economy issue or a cause, I have to look at the different aspects of it, the social aspects, the cultural aspects, of course the economic aspects, and how they interlink together, and how they can be translated or interplay in different contexts. Another thing I would say is to be able to communicate.
Yeah.
Because there is no point if you understand something and you don't share it, and you don't share it with other people that might not be on the same page. And I think I don't want to generalize, but I think that's lacking in many policymakers that I see around, at least in Sudan or in the region, is that like those smart, sharp minds that we see doing well, abroad, getting the best degrees, when they come back home and take policy positions, they're not able to communicate their visions, and hence they don't get the buy-in and the support from the people, and hence it doesn't go anywhere. So I would say critical thinking and the ability to communicate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there is a war currently in Sudan, and I think we would be doing great disservice if we have this interview without talking a little bit about the war in Sudan and how it makes you feel at this particular moment, and also if you can maybe inform other people, because it's one thing for us to hear what is happening in Sudan from the news outlets and so on and so forth, but it's a completely different thing for us to hear it from someone who is from Sudan. So I want to give you that opportunity to actually share with the world how this has made you feel and how the war is affecting ordinary Sudanese people.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this topic, because by the day it gets more, it disappears from the media, from the global media by the day.
Absolutely.
People forget, and I ask myself always, how come it's disappearing even though it's getting worse in real life? And I think maybe the global scene is kind of used to certain areas being hot zones. Like Sudan has been in civil war for many years. It stopped for a few years and then it continued again. So it seems like a cycle of violence that repeats itself every year. But what I want to share with the viewers is that it doesn't get easier. for us that live there. Even though you're like 20 years in war or 15 years in war, it never gets easy. And it makes me sad because I come from, like, my parents are from different regions in Sudan, and both regions have been in war for a long time. And nowadays these regions are suffering more because, areas that are more fragile would of course be more affected with renewed violence. And it makes me sad when I see people having to be displaced for the second time. Like, you get displaced 20 years ago and now you have to be displaced again. Women suffering from sexual violence 20 years ago and again now. Young people spending their whole lives in IDP camps with no opportunities and prospects to go outside and it just fulfills their potential like any other young person would want to. So that's the first point, is that it does not get easier and you can never get used to war. Up until today, now it's almost 8 months. I left my home in April, and up until today, whenever I hear that there are advancements, military advancements in certain areas in Sudan, it still feels the same way I felt back in April. The feeling of loss is also difficult because even if you had very little, still it was yours. It was your home. And it was your place on this planet, and being forced to leave it is not an easy thing, and it's something that you're somewhat pushed to deal with, because at the end of the day, people would be like, but some people died. I recognize that some people died, but also this feeling of loss and having to deal and reorganize your life is not easy. The other element, which is the last one I want to highlight, is how bad the humanitarian situation is, and how it gets worse every day, and how the war is expanding, but also safer areas are getting more pressure by people moving out of war zones. So opportunities to get education, health, or even basic services like water and electricity are becoming more difficult by the day. And the world seems to be numb to that by the day. So yeah, it's very difficult.
You mentioned something very important when you say it seems to be disappearing by the day. And given a chance right now, someone who's watching this, how can ordinary people who are not politicians or whatever assist with the situation? I know now with social media, we have a lot in our hands in terms of digitization and technology that we can assist. How can someone who is currently watching this, what can they do to assist the situation?
I think for people who at least are able to use social media and so on, I would recommend following at least like local voices from Sudan. Maybe just by going online and saying writing hashtag Sudan on Twitter, for example, or writing Sudan on the Facebook search. You might find some people that are tweeting or posting in both Arabic and English for the external world. There are also different platforms for raising funds, because now, for instance, winter is coming in Sudan and all this displaced. Like when I escaped my house, I didn't take any coat with me. So it's only natural that people would need supplies that they would realize that they need by the day. So there are platforms where people can mobilize funds. Most importantly, there have been marches in different places around the world, like in different African capitals, European capitals, and even in the US, where Sudanese communities abroad are organizing like marches, protests, just to raise awareness about what's happening. And I think online, if you follow, you would be able to like at least identify where these are taking place.
Awesome. So in your opinion, and you mentioned earlier that initially you had this question of what a role model is, and no one could actually fit in your sphere. What role do you think role models play in society?
I think for me the most important that I've seen, I experienced, and I see that for a role model is the sounding board kind of idea, because at the end of the day, I don't expect the role model to tell you what to do and take you by hand. Maybe at times, yes, but I want a role model that when I have different ideas, I would be able to share with them, and then they reflect like this option is this option is that, and so on, and then I'll be able to make a decision, because at the end of the day, I would want a decision that's owned rather than dictated. And I think many of us, at least in my generation, I don't consider myself very young, but in my generation, I think that's what we need the most, because with different experiences that you've seen in life, you know what the options are most of the time, but you don't know which one to go for. So my answer would be a sounding board.
Awesome, amazing. So what advice would you give to a young person who wants to be an economist and focus on political economy?
I would say I would say start be easy on yourself. It's not an easy field. Economics in itself is a bit intimidating for some people, because when you think economics, you think numbers, you think models, and so on. But there've been advancement in the field itself, where like there is like some political economy, behavioral economics, things that are less kind of quantitative, more qualitative. So I think this can be more appealing. So be easy on yourself. If on first year you don't do well on calculus, you don't do well on model and these kind of things. As when it comes to political economy, I think you would find your passion, because politics would always interlink with different things that are around people. If you want to be a feminist, there's a political aspect of it. If you want to be like an activist, of course, politics is a big deal, and so on. So be easy on yourself, explore your different options, and just know that just because you're not working for the World Bank, or you're not working for the central bank in your country, or you're not getting the highest positions, it doesn't mean you can make change within your own community in a particular moment of time.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about YALP,
Yeah.
the Young African Leaders Program. In what way would you say it has impacted your leadership?
That's a good question. I think for me, it's the most important aspect. Of course, the program has its official objectives that I think it has satisfied for me. But personally, where on earth would I spend 3 months with African young people from 23 other countries? Like that's an opportunity for me, honestly. And I would say that over the past years, I learned a lot more than all these countries than I've learned all my life. Because no matter how much I read, I wouldn't have the opportunity to discuss, to be corrected, to be sarcastic about things in different countries, these kind of things, and explore them in a more kind of informal way. I think for me that's the biggest win. And of course there is the friendship kind of aspect, where I know that I have some support in, like, if I land in South Africa one day because my flight is delayed, I would have to call you, this kind of things. Yeah, so there is that. The other professional aspect of it is that as someone who's been practicing or being in the political sphere in Sudan, over the years I've lost faith in the multilateral institutions like the AU, the IGAD, because I didn't see some good intervention in what's happening in Sudan. Even the UN, at some point, I was like, what are we doing here? But now, I think with the academic side of the program, with the different experiences and the exposure, I feel like maybe there is room, and I even see myself taking part in some of these institutions, trying to at least bring about the change I haven't been seeing.
Mama, thank you so much for coming to this session. And love and light for what is happening in Sudan at the moment. Thank you very much for taking your time to be with us. This brings us to the end of this episode. Please follow Jawhara as she continues to thrive in the economic political space. And please also follow what is happening in Sudan at the moment, as she advised. As usual, follow, like, comment, and subscribe the STG YouTube channel. Peace out.